Hey everyone, hope you're well. Alright then, it is time for another Top 10 Riff Battle video here on my channel. Today we'll be having a look at the year 1982 with 10 of that year's very best guitar riffs, chosen by me. We'll be playing them off in no particular order, with a word or two about each. And then, when all is said and done, you guys can drop a vote for your favorite down below in the comments. Easy as smoke on the water. But first up, we need to go back to my 1981 video from a number of weeks ago and choose a winner. So let's get on that right now. Good then, the winner of Riff Battle 1981 is, and it wasn't even close, this monster riff from the great Eddie Van Halen. I mean, really, how the hell could that not win? Simply one of the greatest hard rock riffs of all time. Limelight by Alex Lifeson and Rush pulled out a strong second place with AC/DC and For Those About to Rock nipping at its heels in third. Alright then, 1982. Now, as we're getting a few years into the 80s, one would expect this list to be filled with nothing but hard rock and metal, as those genres were having a massive mainstream boom during that decade, and great hard rock and metal guitar riffs were in no short supply, to say the least. However, this year holds a few surprises, with a couple of hugely iconic guitar riffs coming out of pop and light rock. So let's start with one of those, shall we, as contender number one. So then, for contender number one, we have an extremely famous riff that is almost always attributed to the wrong guitarist. As a result of his very well-known and iconic guitar solo on this track, most people just assume that Eddie Van Halen also composed and played this riff. Plus, I suppose, all the other guitar parts on this one, but that certainly is not the case. That distinction would go to Toto guitarist and hotshot session fretmaster Steve Lukather, who was brought into the studio by producer Quincy Jones to help compose and arrange this track in an effort to give Michael Jackson a bit more of a rock edge for this particular track. By now, you no doubt know exactly what riff I'm talking about. So without further ado, here is that riff from Steve Lukather, not Eddie Van Halen, and Michael Jackson from 1982. This is Beat It. On to contender number two. This one is a lifelong personal favorite of mine, and though it's probably the least well-known track on this list, barring maybe one other, there's no way, no how it wasn't going to be here on my 1982 list. We're talking about Canadian guitar icon Frank Marino, also sometimes known as Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. Now, in my humble opinion, there are two Canadian guitarists in history that stand head and shoulders above all the rest. One is Alex Lifeson of Rush, and the other is, of course, Frank Marino, or as I like to think of him, as Jimi Hendrix on speed. Unfortunately, as incredible as Frank was on this instrument from a technical standpoint, he just didn't seem to have the songwriting chops needed to forge much mainstream success. This riff, as my contender number two, is, however, one of his more well-known riffs and tracks, and was a minor international rock hit in 1982. This is Frank Marino and Strange Dreams. All right then, contender number 3, and we're going to follow one Canadian guitarist with another here. This one was a much bigger rock hit worldwide than our previous track with Frank Marino, but alas, it was this guy's only hit. In the pantheon of rock one-hit wonders, this one is usually pretty high up on the list. Everyone knows this one, and it's simple yet very powerful opening guitar riff. This is Aldo Nova and the opening riff to his massive 1982 rock hit, Fantasy. Contender number 4. All right then, I'm going to hit you with another fairly obscure riff here, but a real good one in my opinion. This time from German guitarist Michael Schenker. Now, if you're a guitarist, you of course know who Michael Schenker is. However, his mainstream popularity at his peak in the late 70s and 80s was much more prominent in Europe than it was here in North America. 1982 saw the release of his album Assault Attack, his one and only album to feature the very formidable pipes of Graham Bonnet on vocals. Now, it's not generally considered to be his very best album, nor was it his worst, but this track in particular is certainly a highlight of that album, and one of Schenker's most well-known tracks of his career overall. This is my contender number 4. This is Desert Song from Michael Schenker. Contender number 5, and again, we're going to stray a little bit outside the genres of hard rock and metal for this one. This 2-chord slide blues lick is one of the most famous riffs ever created and is instantly recognizable the moment you hear it. Mostly due to its inclusion in countless movies, TV shows, and commercials all, throughout the years, in addition to its still constant play on classic rock radio. This riff at its core, it's basically a sped up and reworked version of Muddy Waters' 1955 blues classic, Mannish Boy. But Delaware's George Thorogood totally made this one his own and generally gets all the credit for this uber famous rendition of this riff. This is contender number 5. This is Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood. Good then, let's follow up Bad to the Bone with some thrash metal, shall we? Because for contender number 6, we have what is arguably the very first thrash metal song in history. Now, of course, some would disagree with that assertion, but you can firmly put me in the other camp, because I was there in the early 80s, and when this track dropped in 1982, I personally had never heard anything heavier or faster. And I like to think that I knew my metal pretty well at the time. The band I speak of is Accept from Germany, and then on their 1982 sophomore effort, Restless and Wild, they put themselves on the metal map worldwide and helped ring in what was basically a whole new genre of music, or at the very least, a whole new genre of metal. So let's check out what I and many others consider to be the very first thrash or speed metal track. This is contender number 6. This is Fast as a Shark by Wolf Hoffman and Accept. Right then, contender number 7, let's mellow things out a little bit here, shall we? Like Beat It and Bad to the Bone, which we've already covered, this is another non-metal, non-hard rock track with an opening riff that is recognizable by pretty much everyone. And like Fantasy by Aldo Nova was another one-hit wonder. This band fits the mold of one-hit wonders so succinctly that many people don't even know the proper name of this band, simply referring to them as the Eye of the Tiger Band. Kind of sad, really, but it's Survivor, by the way. Can't honestly say that I like this track very much, but however, this riff from 1982 is certainly one of the most iconic in rock history, so it certainly needed to be here. This is Eye of the Tiger by the Eye of the Tiger Band, Survivor, as contender number 7. All right then, now let's get to more of that metal that of course had to be here, shall we? Gonna hit you with 2 in a row. Contender number 8 is from the mighty Iron Maiden, with the title track from the band's 1982 release, Number of the Beast. Loads of cool guitar riffs from this album, and I could have chosen any number of them to slot in here. However, when it comes right down to it, I think this one is far and away the most iconic and the most impactful when one first hears it. Coming off the spooky spoken word Bible quotes which opens the album. This is the track and album that blew it wide open for Iron Maiden worldwide. This is contender number 8. This is Number of the Beast.
Its number is 666.
Good then, more metal in the contender number 9 slot, this time with Maiden's fellow countryman Judas Priest. The album Screaming for Vengeance was released in 1982, and like Maiden's Number of the Beast, it took Priest's international fame and success to a whole other level, well beyond what they had managed to achieve on their previous 7 albums. I can't believe they put 7 albums out before this one. Now, there is another riff on this album that maybe a few others would have chosen, that being the riff to You've Got Another Thing Coming, as that was the major single release from this album and has become somewhat of a signature track for Priest over the years. Yet I decided to go with the other big one from this album because, well, I think it's the better overall guitar riff. This is my contender number 9. This is the riff to Electric Eye with its lead-in, the Hellion, because they kind of go hand in hand. Let's check it out. All right, then let's finish up. Now, this one's a wee bit of a cheat because though it was released in 1982, it was actually recorded 4 years previous and sat unreleased for 4 years. This will certainly be our last inclusion on any of these lists going forward from the great Led Zeppelin, as this album closed out their career, and it was sadly just a collection of unreleased outtakes, a few of which simply solidify why they were outtakes to begin with. However, a few of these tracks, most notably all 3 of the outtakes that didn't make 1978's In Through the Outdoor album, are all fantastic cuts that certainly would have enhanced and improved that album if they had been included in the first place. Leaving Ozone Baby, Darlene, and Wearing and Tearing off of In Through the Outdoor was definitely a misstep, in my opinion. You put those 3 tracks in place of Southbound Suarez, Hot Dog, and Carouselambra, And In Through the Outdoor might not be battling presence in most people's eyes as Zeppelin's worst studio album. As it stands, I personally rank it last, In Through the Outdoor, as I think Presence is a brilliant album myself, based solely on Achilles' Last Stand. Probably the greatest thing Zeppelin ever recorded. Regardless, where was I? The riffs. Oh, yes. Gonna go with Wearing and Tearing, the last track from Coda, and like I said, an outtake from 1978's In Through the Outdoor, as my contender number 10. Well, that'll just about do it for 1982. I certainly hope you enjoyed that. Please drop a vote for your favorite down below in the comments, as that's how this whole thing works. And we'll do this all over again in a few weeks when we have a look at 1983. Also, please drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be awfully nice and much appreciated. Hit that notification bell so you know when I upload something new. I hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may find you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.